Welcome to Film Forum Presents, a podcast featuring special live events recorded at our theater located at 209 West Houston Street in downtown Manhattan. In this episode, Film Forum presents filmmaker Nadine Labaki, who appeared for a Q&A following the U.S. premiere of her movie, CAPERNAUM, on December 14, 2018. The Q&A was moderated by critic and writer Joe McGovern. CAPERNAUM is nominated for the 2019 Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film.
I'm Adam Walker. I'm the Director of Communications here at Film Forum. Thank you so much for coming out to the U.S. theatrical premiere of Nadine Labaki's CAPERNAUM, which A.O. Scott today called a fairy tale and an opera, a pot boiler and a news bulletin, a howl of protest and an anthem of resistance, in his rave review in the New York Times. We are thrilled to be opening this film, which won the jury prize at this year's Cannes Film Festival, where it also received a 15-minute standing ovation at its premiere. We're even more thrilled to have its maker join us today. The immensely talented Nadine Labaki's many and varied credits include 2 films that she wrote, directed, and starred in: Caramel in 2007, which is available on DVD at our concession, and 2011's Where Do We Go Now, which remains Lebanon's highest-grossing Arabic film to date. She's also starred in several films, including Mea Culpa, Stray Bullet, and Rock the Casbah. You'll also see her make a cameo in this movie as Zane's lawyer, so watch out for that. Please stick around after the screening for what will no doubt be a fascinating Q&A moderated by the film critic and journalist Joe McGovern. Enjoy the show. Please help me welcome filmmaker Nadine Labaki.
Thank you.
And this is Joe McGovern. He'll be moderating tonight.
And there's also Khalid Muzannar, who's the producer and music composer of the film.
Nadine, congratulations.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
Thank you so much. I know it's been a long journey
Yes.
to get here. We were just talking in the lobby about how I have a theory that any movie that ends with the main character's face can't be bad. There's no film, and this one, of course, is much more than just not bad. This is a remarkable film. So going back, it's been about 7 years since your previous feature as a director. I guess I've heard the story is that you were just taking all these ideas and sticking them up on the wall. So you had a wall full of just sort of story threads, and that is sort of where the title came from, which I know you're asked about this a lot. So if you can maybe describe the process and how the title emerged from that.
Yes, absolutely. I've known this word, Capernaum, or in French, actually I've known it in French, CAPERNAUM, or in Arabic, CAPERNAUM. Ever since I was a child, in school, I used to use it to impress my teacher. And it signifies, at that moment, I knew that it signified chaos, disorder. It's originally the name of a biblical village that was cursed by Jesus at some point, and it was a village where also Jesus made his first miracle. So it started being used throughout history to signify chaos and disorder and hell in a way. So when we started writing the script, before even starting to write, actually, when we've put all those themes on the board, like you're saying, wanting to talk about child labor, migrant workers' rights, children's rights, the absurdity of having to have a paper to prove that you exist, the absurdity of borders, all those themes, early marriage. And at some point I look at the board and I go, c'est un Capernaum, this is a Capernaum, this is chaos, this is hell, we're living in hell. And that's how it all started. It started with a title, and then we started, researching and writing the whole film. So I used to use it when I was in school, but I was very surprised to know that not a lot of people know what this word means. I don't know why I knew it. I don't know why I used to, sometimes I used to look up at sophisticated names in the dictionary to impress my teacher, and this was one of them. Yeah.
So before we talk about the film itself and this extraordinary performance by Zane, who we should really give a round of applause, just because I don't know where
Yeah, he's something.
don't know how. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most amazing child performances I've ever seen. What was the process like? It was going around, and it must have been in some ways heartbreaking, interviewing children
Yes.
and talking to them about.
It was very difficult because it was during the research, obviously, and so we research and we're trying to capture the reality and then come back and try to weave, those scenes that we've seen in real life in a story. And during the whole process, of course, when you're interviewing those kids, we saw hundreds and thousands of kids. And when you're interviewing those kids and talking to them, of course, you're always looking for your actor all the time. I was looking for Zayn everywhere. In every child, I was seeing it. But it was a long process. So it took 2 years of research until we finished the script. And I didn't find Zayn. Obviously, I found many very interesting kids and amazing kids, but I hadn't found Zayn yet. And it was at one point we said, okay, so now the script is finished. We don't have any money to start the film yet, but I won't start the whole process unless we find Zayn. And I knew it. If we don't find our actors, we're not going to start the whole process. So I gathered a group of amazing people who were willing to help me with the casting, and they went everywhere in Lebanon. And it was like a street casting. So Zayn was the casting director saw him in one of those slums that is very similar to what you see in the film, and he was playing next to his house with his friends. She interviewed him, and obviously, when I saw the interview, it was obvious. You can't miss it. He was everything we had written in the script. If you read the description, it's in the description, it says he has to be smaller than his age because of malnutrition. He has to have these eyes that have been a witness to so much suffering and to so many things. He has to have this foul language because he's grown up on the street, and this body expression. And he is everything we had written. And it was very amazing to see. It was almost a miracle when we found Zayn.
And I mean, there's quite a blending of reality and fiction here.
Yes.
There's so many, in big and small ways. I mean, there's a little moment I remember where he sneezes on the street, and I know that wasn't scripted.
No.
And also when when he meets who he thinks is Spider-Man, we remember that this is a little boy. Even though he's growing up very fast for his age, he still is really thrilled to meet a superhero, even though the guy's smoking a cigarette. So the process of filming this, an enormous amount of footage.
Yes.
How many hours did you shoot? Over how many months?
500 hours of rushes. We've shot for 6 months. The first version of the film was 12 hours. Yes. It was a very because we were open to whatever life was going to give us. Of course, you start with a very solid script, because you can't do otherwise. If you can't really improvise well, otherwise you'd get lost if you don't know your material very, very well, and if you don't start with a very solid starting point and a very solid landing point. So the script was there all the time to just remind us where we're starting, where we're going, and the structure of it was very important, that the story was very important, but in between, we were open to whatever life also was going to give us, whatever the actors were going to add. And it was a collaborative process. For me, I felt that I wasn't entitled in a way to impose what I had written or what I had imagined or what we had imagined only. I knew that this was a starting point, and there was so much more to explore with the actors themselves, because they are living almost the same circumstances and the same stories. So we had to always be collaborating in that whole process. And Zayn was collaborating also because he knows what we're talking about. He knows the suffering that he's portraying on the screen. He knows that he's being the voice of those kids that he's seen suffer a lot. Zayn has had to fight to exist all the time. when you live in such circumstances. He lives in circumstances much worse than what you see in the film. The only difference is that he has loving parents. But Zayn had to work. He had to run errands, just like in the film. He had to work in a small, shop as a delivery boy. And he never went to school. When we started shooting, he was 12. He didn't even know how to write his own name, which was only 3 letters. But the nice story is that now Zayn is in Norway. He's been resettled with all his family in Norway. He's going to school for the first time in his life, and he's really regaining his childhood. But at the time we were shooting, it was very difficult. So he was collaborating in the script.
Can you also tell us about, I don't want to mispronounce her name, but Jordanos
Shifarau.
Who plays his sort of best friend
Yes.
in the film, and her son, who's actually a girl.
A girl, yes. Her name is Treasure.
Her name is Treasure.
Yes, she's a real treasure, no? Yeah.
She also was not an actress.
No.
Was going through the same process
Yes.
as Zayn was.
Yes, she was exactly living in the same circumstances. The only difference is she didn't have a baby, but she was illegal in Lebanon. She had run away from her employer, from many different employers. Shows she was living illegally in Lebanon, no papers, nothing, and she was living in fear all the time, exactly like in the film. So when we started shooting, when we met her, it was also difficult in the beginning to trust anybody. So she was a bit scared or anxious when she was approached by the casting director who spoke to her, or interviewed her. But it took some time, and then she started being more trusting, and then this amazing relationship happened, and she was in the film, and she's amazing. You can see it in everything she is. She's been through a lot. She was an orphan at the age of 3. She had to take care, she had to live on her own with her brothers and sisters. And then she came to Lebanon, was living in very difficult circumstances because of the sponsorship system, unfortunately, in Lebanon. It's almost like modern slavery. So when we started shooting, when we shot those scenes when she was arrested by in the cyber cafe, 2 days later she gets arrested in real life because of the same problems, and she stayed in the prison for 3 weeks. And not only that, the mother and father of Jonas, of Treasure, also get arrested with her at the same time, because they were in the same situation, also illegal migrant workers living in Lebanon. So when we are shooting those scenes where Treasure is on her own, she was really on her own without her mom. So we had to take her and take care of her for 3 weeks until we were able to get everybody out. But still, you have this impression that you're not shooting just a film. There's something else. There's something beyond all of us. We were actually capturing reality as it was happening. It gives you a lot, like the sense that you're on a sort of a mission in a way, because this is not just a film. There's something else happening there, and it was like this all the time.
There are a few actors in the film. In fact, Zayn's lawyer is played by an actor.
Yes. Guess who?
That's you.
Yeah.
So one last question from me, and then we got to go open it up to the audience, because I think this is a movie that really kind of needs a conversation with people who have just seen it. I know you've opened today in the United States, and you're going to do some more things around the U.S., but you do want to take it back to Lebanon and show it to the government.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you hope happens there?
I think it's the only way for this film, for me to, in a way, to feel like I've come to a closure with the film, because I really, it's very difficult to let go when you feel like there's so much more to do. It shouldn't, for me, it doesn't stop at the borders of just a film. It should become a conversation, and this is how I think the healing starts in a way. We have to just, my mission is, my duty is to take it beyond just, being a film. And we're going to show it to the government. We're going to organize round tables. We're going to talk to different ministries. sit down, talk to. We are getting a lot of help from the UN, from the UNHCR, UNICEF. That's how Zayn got resettled. That's how most of the kids are going to school now. So it's there's a sort of movement that it's starting to happen, and we need to take it further, even if nothing's going to happen, because obviously sometimes it's like that, and there's a lot of cynicism in this world, and there's a lot of people that tell you you're dreaming, nothing's going to happen. It's but still, I think we need to try. We have to try, and that's what we're going to do.
So I had the great honor of interviewing you about your last film, Where Do We Go Now? And my question is exactly the same. Where do we go now with the worldwide immigration? Because you're telling such a unique and specific story, and yet it's so pervasive. We can't help here in the United States identifying with the children that are now at the border coming in from Central America. How do we get a grip on the reality of the people trapped in this immigration nightmare?
Very good, and I also should mention you've been talking very movingly about Alan Kurdi,
Yes.
the little boy whose photograph we all saw on the beach about 2 or 3 years ago, I guess while you were working on this. So it's a very, very important question. Thank you.
Yes, this picture actually was a turning point for me, because when I saw this tiny little body lying there on the beach, started imagining this whole journey and what happened before he got there. You can't help but wonder, if this child could talk, what would he say? What would he tell the world? How would he address us adults? You have failed him in a way. And he was paying the price of our conflicts and our wars and our failing governments and failing systems. And I think of course, I don't have a solution, but for me, a child is a child, no matter where he's coming from, whether he's a Syrian refugee or a child being separated from his parents at the Mexican border, or an Indian child carrying, a cement block that is 10 times heavier than his body because he has to feed his parents, or a Brazilian child also working to feed his family. A child is a child, and that's what we should be looking at. And at the end of the day, those people are just trying to survive. They're fleeing difficult circumstances from where they are. They're trying in a way to survive. And I don't have a solution, but this is the way I see it. And this is something that should be. It's not the responsibility of 1 or 2 or 3 countries in the world. Unfortunately, this is what's happening. Only 10 countries are carrying the heaviest load. Lebanon is an invisible dot on the map, and it has hosted the highest number of refugees in the world. It's almost half the population, and it's already dealing with its own economical problems. This is it should be a shared responsibility. 193 members of the United Nations have signed that this, or have agreed that this is a shared responsibility for the whole world. But this is not happening. Why isn't it happening? How come we're not all sharing it? So I don't know what is the solution, but that's only logical, I think.
But I mean, the marquee outside of this theater does reference Charles Dickens. It says, if Dickens were to have written a story in Beirut, I mean, and he wrote literature about poverty and debtors' prisons and did get laws changed. I mean, you do believe, obviously, in the power of storytelling.
Absolutely. I believe in the power of art. I believe in the power of cinema, storytelling, because it actually humanizes the problem. Instead of hearing about it in the news in a sort of abstract kind of way in figures and numbers, you're actually seeing the struggle through a human being. You're giving it a face. It's the face of a child or of a mother or a father or a family, but you're actually seeing it. You're empathizing with it. You're identifying with this person that you're seeing on the big screen, and it moves you differently. And when you know that you're watching people that are actually living those same circumstances, I think it even has a bigger impact on you, because you know that you're living this theater today, you know that these kids and these people are still there in that same struggle. So it does have a completely different impact on you, and it does ignite some kind of, I think, will to act or to do something about it.
The question I'd like to ask is if there was any precedent for this idea of a child suing the parents, if that was actually real, yeah.
No.
No.
That was the only fantasy in the film. Because in reality, a child cannot sue his parents because he needs to have a guardian in order to sue, a legal guardian to sue anyone because he's a minor. In that case, his legal guardian is his parents, so he cannot sue his parents. So this was the only symbolic, in a way, fantasy in the film. And it was inspired by those discussions that I used to have with those children. And we're talking about children who've been facing extreme neglect, children who've been abused, raped, children who've been living on the streets, in prisons, in shelters. So I used to ask them one question at the end of the conversation, which is, are you happy to be alive? Unfortunately, most of the times the answer was no. I'm not happy to be alive. I wish I was dead. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I am born if no one is going to love me, if I'm going to be raped and beaten up every day and abused, and I'm never going to eat when I'm hungry, and I'm never going to hear a nice word. Nobody's going to ever kiss me or give me a hug or love me. Why am I here? Why? And these kids, because some of them are in prison also, they have a notion of their right. So they tell you they don't have the right to do this. They cannot do this. So they have this notion of right, what's right, righteousness in a way. So it was, for me, it was like all of a sudden I had this clear idea in my head when I started to want to translate this anger. Yes, this is going to be the story of a child who's going to stand in front of the world and say no more. So he's going to stand in front of a judge because the judge is the justice, and he's going to say, you don't have the right to do this to me. I want to sue my parents for giving me life. And it's his way of saying, you don't deserve me. You don't deserve me being in this world. You don't deserve me if you're not responsible enough to be up to who I am. And he's not only suing his parents, he's really suing the whole world. He's suing the whole world through his parents.
Hi, thank you so much. It was really wonderful film, and I really feel like you captured like the reality of Lebanon, and I've worked in Bil-Mukhaymat, and it's like it's really fascinating. But my question is, it seems at the end, like you're the savior and the court is the savior, and but you want to show us the dawla. And I remember when I was working in Bajnoub, and my uncle is a minister, and he kept saying, "Why are you working Bil-Mukhaymat?" And he would never stepped into that. So I was wondering, why is it the dawla that's going to save? Why are you showing, yourself as the savior instead of who? Yeah. And then they go get resettled as a solution.
That's a harsh way of seeing it. I'm not showing.
No, I'm.
No.
Some people may see it that way. Yes. So I'm
no,
curious.
the absence. Just to explain to people, dawla is government. The absence of the government is in every frame of the film. I don't see the government as the savior. And the film ends on this dossier, on this file, being just classified among all these files. And you know what a chaos this government is and what a chaos this system is. I mean, the chaos of the system is in every single frame of the film, in every situation, in those slums, in those gutters, in the fact that nobody looks at these children. And I don't see how the government is the savior in the film. And the reason why I played this part, actually the role of the lawyer was much bigger than that. In the film, you understand why she's actually defending Zayn and what is her own story and what made her get to this point. But when we were watching after we've shot everything and during the edit, I felt I was the only lie in the film because I'm not a real lawyer. And I felt there was something wrong with me portraying this lawyer. So that's why we took everything out and we just kept those moments where you just understand how he got to this point. How did he get to just make his voice heard and stand in front of a judge? So that's why we kept those moments. It was not meant to be, but maybe you see it this way because I'm the filmmaker and there's a preconceived ideas also. But I don't know if somebody doesn't know that I'm the filmmaker and that I'm playing the part of the lawyer, if you'd see it as a savior. So I think this has to do with the sort of a misconception, I think. And it was not the intention.
Thank you for your incredible film, especially for the last scene, because it's a scene of hope. And it reminded me of Truffaut, the 400 Blows.
Talking about it before, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so hopeful. That smile, I remember it forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's actually this was one of the scenes that didn't move at any point. It was there in the script. It was there when and it was never. There was never a question that this film was going to end this way. And it's the only time where Zayn actually makes eye contact with you as a viewer. And I think this makes the whole difference. I think this is where he looks at you and says, you have to look at me. I'm here. I exist. You have to stop being oblivious to who I am. That's why it has such a, I think, big impact on anyone who sees the film.
Very powerful and great information for us to know and learn. And one of the things, because I'm a midwife and because I work with parents and because I've had my own 2 children, I was really being very much caught up with the relationship of the baby and the mom and the baby and the son. Wasn't really her son, but she adopted this child, and this child adopted her child. And that relationship with the child being able to communicate with the mom, and the mom with the baby, and the child with the child. It was just a very powerful, those times of communication was really powerful to me, and I don't know how you were able to photograph it and project it to us, but it was definitely there, this relationship, and towards the end, the child was there.
Thank you so much. Do you want to maybe just
Yes.
talk a minute about
this relationship?
Was this with some of the 500 hours of footage required? Just lots of patience.
Yeah. Yes, of course, we knew from the start that we needed time to create these relationships, and to create the relationships between us, the crew also, and the actors, and between the actors themselves. Time was very essential, and also the fact that we shot chronologically everything, and that there was no fear of, if it doesn't work today, it will work tomorrow. If it doesn't work tomorrow, it will work. So the freedom that we had in shooting, actually, and the fact that we were not scared of timing, or scared of the paralyzing way of making films usually. The fact that Khaled, my husband, produced the film, even though he didn't have any experience in producing. He's a music composer, and he was in a way thrown into that situation. And maybe it was for the best, because there was a sort of freedom, and there was a sort of that allowed us to create those relationships, and to just not be scared. Sometimes we had to first become, in a way, invisible, and not to paralyze the actors, because usually that's what you do. An actor comes prepared, or he's at the service of a certain mise en scène or a certain way of filming. Or in this case, it was the other way. We had to be at their service. We had to adapt to their personality, to their rhythm, especially when you're working with children. Children are it was such a nurturing experience also, because children make the most sense in a way. They are pure nature. They are nature that is not altered or informed by society's codes or politics or hypocrisy or what should be done and what shouldn't be done. They are just raw, pure nature. So they make the most sense. So what you need to do is actually create the right situation for them to just react in their own instinctive and real and true nature. And that's what we did the whole time. We just had to create the right situations. And the fact maybe also that I was at this point where we were shooting, I had, my daughter was the same age, and I was breastfeeding also. And I used to see myself in Jordanus, in Rahil. She was my mirror in a way. And I knew there's something in you, that your instinctive motherhood that tells you I used to know when Treasure is going to get sleepy, what she needs, when she's hungry, when she's not. I used to know when she was going to actually put her hand in Rahil's breast, or in it. It's something about just knowing children and knowing this nature and just adapting to it and just waiting for magic to happen. You can't expect children to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. It's impossible. It's impossible. You just have to wait for the right moment. There was not at any point the word action when we were shooting. You can't just say action and expect them to do, a baby who's 1 year old, to do what you want him to do. So you have to really just know when you start shooting. And I had this amazing crew. My cinematographer, is just a blessing, because he was very patient. He knew what the film needed. My crew was just amazing. And if you watch the making of, they were dancing around the actors because they were there just trying to capture the slices moment of truth, of reality. And this is how it all worked out.
And your editor, we should give his name too.
Yes, Konstantin Bok.
Konstantin Bok. He's also very patient.
Very.
And your cinematographer's name is?
My Christopher Aoun.
Amazing
yes,
work.
He's amazing. I was blessed with an amazing crew. We were. There's a before and after CAPERNAUM for us. We changed as human beings, every one of us. It was a very nurturing adventure for all of us, and we felt that we were all, in just one bubble, this family that were working together towards one aim. And I'd never felt this doubt, because when you have a crew that doubts what you're doing, that is always, not sure and always waiting for things to happen, and just you can't. It's paralyzing. We were just all moving forward in one direction.
Well, I want to tell everybody, if you were moved by the film, and I'm assuming many of you were since you're still here, please tell a friend. Today's its opening day, and this is a movie that needs support from audiences and word of mouth.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
If I can just echo some of the lovely comments from the audience, thank you so much for this beautiful piece of work.
Thank you all for being. It's amazing to see a full house the first day. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Film Forum Presents. Special thanks to Sony Pictures Classics for making this event possible. If you like what you just heard, please be sure to subscribe to get future episodes and rate and review so that more movie lovers can find us. Film Forum is an independent nonprofit cinema, and our doors have been kept open for nearly 50 years thanks to the invaluable support of our members and donors. Please visit www.filmforum.org for details on membership, as well as information and showtimes for our current programming. See you at the movies.